Hi everyone, welcome back to the Art of Business English. And today, episode 119. So getting along now, quite a few episodes under my belt. So look, I just wanted to give you a quick update before I start today's lesson. I think it's quite an interesting time to give one. I'm sure most of you are in a similar situation. You know, we've had this terrible difficult time with the coronavirus, confinement. It's been quite a challenge, and I really just wanted to, say thanks to everyone who's still here following. I hope you've enjoyed the content. What's been surprising is that I think, and I'm sure most of you will notice this, we've actually worked a lot more than in the past. I feel that I've actually thrown myself into more work, and the fact that you're at home the whole time, you really don't have much of a division between, your personal life, your time for yourself. You're living in close quarters with your family, and there's always, something to do. You've always got to cook and clean and prepare and get things ready, get the kids with their homework. So, I appreciate probably most of you are also going through the same thing. And I've even found myself, on the point of almost burning out at some points, and I've had to pull back. So I just wanted to just give that little update, because I'm sure that, if you guys are feeling the same, I wanted you to appreciate that you're not alone, that this situation is really unprecedented and very peculiar. It's quite an interesting learning experience as well, I must admit. Some people have been completely stopped, so they've been made redundant, or they've been put on temporary unemployment benefits. And, they're just sitting around wondering what to do, and maybe they're very bored and don't have anything to do. Whereas other people like myself who run a business, I feel that I've actually had to work a lot harder, and I've had to I don't know why, but I feel like this sensation has been very stressful, getting teams organized and people ready, and just quickly adapting to a sudden change. But at the same time, it's been quite an interesting learning experience for me, for my team, for my family. So if you're going through these same trials and tribulations, I wanted you guys just to appreciate that you're not alone, that I think it's a lot of people are going through it. The good thing is that we're starting to see the other side of it now. We're all coming out of this situation now. I've been taking more and more trips outside to do little things here and there. And there's a lot of people around now, which is nice. It's just, especially here in Europe, we've got summer's coming, we're in spring, there's nice weather. So it's really interesting how, things are evolving and changing, and people seem to be coming out of their, bunker and, trying to start their life again. It'll be very interesting to see how things change and evolve. But what an interesting time, what a challenging time, what a time for learning and really appreciating, characteristics about yourself. I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned a lot about my team. I've learned a lot about people in general, like what people are capable of doing. A lot of people, even my staff, they would sometimes with, implementing new technology and new ways of working, they would push back before this. Oh, why do we have to do this? And you'd have to really explain and really encourage them and push them. Whereas now with this sudden forced change, people have just adapted like that, and it's quite interesting and quite it's good news just to see that even staff or members of the team who really struggled with technological side of things, or they really had this resistance to technology and using it, have also been able to adapt. So it's been a very interesting time. It's been a very interesting transformation, and it will be interesting to see how things go forward. So I just wanted to give a little update because, I think we're all coming out of this now, and it's giving us, time to pause for thought and reflect a bit. And I think it's a good time to do that now. Now is a great time to reflect on the experience. Maybe sit down with your kids or your family or your wife or your partner, your husband, whoever, whatever, and just sit back, reflect on it, and think about what's been positive, what lessons you've learned, what you can take away from the experience, because that will inevitably make you a better, stronger person, and ideas that maybe you'll need to draw upon in the future. So with that being said, I would like now to move over to our episode for today, which is basically, what are future time clauses? Now, future time clauses are, there's a little bit of grammar here today. They're basically time expressions, and I'm going to just give you an overview of them. I'm going to give you some examples, and I'm going to tell you how to use them correctly, because they often cause non-native speakers some little mistakes. The mistakes are very easily corrected, but they're very common. So once you see the mistake, or once you see how the structure is used correctly, I'm sure you can avoid making that mistake in the future. So I'm going to dive over now to the computer, and we're going to have a look at future time clauses and how to use them correctly. Okay then, so episode 119. What are future time clauses? Let's dive in and have a look at these useful and really important everyday used time expressions. So yeah, they are time. These are time clauses, and they're actually time expressions. And when we use them, this is the thing to talk about the future. They're not followed by a future tense, but by a present tense. And this is really the main crux of the lesson here. This is what you need to take away from this. The typical mistake is that people will use a future tense after these future time clauses. Okay, so really you need to avoid that, because in English we actually use a present tense, which can be the present simple or the present perfect. And my experience is based on Spanish speakers. So in Spanish, they have a tense called the subjunctive tense, and future time clauses in Spanish are actually followed by a subjunctive tense, and therefore they can be confused by non-native speakers when they think about it in their native language, and then they try and translate it over to English. They put a future tense because they think, or because we are in fact talking about the future. Let's just have a quick look then at an example or two so that you can get an idea of what I mean. For example, when is a future time clause. I mean, you can use this in the past. You can say when I went, obviously. But when we're using these time clauses in the future to refer to things that are going to happen in the future, they are referred to as future time clauses. So when I finish university, I'll travel the world. So, when is the future time clause here, or the time clause here? And that's when I finish. So it's not when I will finish, even though you will finish in the future. Okay, so when I finish university in the future, that's the first clause. There is a comma, and that's very important. I mean, in spoken English, it's not obvious, but in written English, you must put a comma after this first clause. So when I finish university, comma, I'll travel the world. The second clause in the sentence has the future tense will, which is necessary there. Okay, another example is, the sun will have set by the time I get home. So the sun will have set by the time I get home. Now, by the time is a future time clause here. And you say by the time I get, not by the time I will get. Okay, so obviously you will get home in the future, but after by the time, we would say I get home and not I will get home, okay? And I'm going to talk about by the time in a bit more detail, because it's also a little bit confusing for non-native speakers, because you don't, from my experience, the Spanish language, which is my reference point for training people, doesn't really use this expression by the time. So I'll go into some more detail about that later. All right, so when we want to emphasize, now this is also important, when we want to emphasize that one action finishes before another action starts, we use the present perfect simple. So I'll give you an example. I'll tidy up as soon as the painters have left. Okay, so we want to emphasize that the painters need to leave first before you can tidy up. Okay, so I'll tidy up as soon as the painters have left. Now you can say as soon as the painters leave in the present simple, I will tidy up. That would also work. Okay, so you can use in many situations with the future time clause, you can use both the present simple, so as soon as the painters leave, Or if you want to be a bit more emphatic about this action finishing, you would say, as soon as the painters have left, with the present perfect. Okay, so really important that you understand that we use them in this sense. Okay, so you've got the simple present or the present perfect to emphasize. So now I'm going to turn to the next part of the episode where we look at each of these time clauses in the future, and of course I'll give you an example sentence. So let's have a look then. The first one is as soon as. Okay, so as soon as, I think in Spanish it means tan pronto como. So as soon as is a future time clause, and it means like, it's like when. So an example would be as soon as we get to the airport, okay, as soon as we get to the airport, comma, we will check in. So it basically means like at that very moment we arrive at the airport, we will check in. So like as soon as we get, not as soon as we will get. Again, we're using the present simple here. Okay, another time future time clause or the time clause that's used in the future is when. Now, when is probably the most common. Okay, a lot of them can be just substituted for when. So when is obviously in Spanish cuando. Okay, and an example would be when you finish the report, we will go for lunch. Again, I could say here, when you have finished with the present perfect. So when you finish or when you have finished the report, if I want to put emphasis on the fact that the report will need to be finished first before we will go to lunch. Okay, so when you finish the report or when you have finished the report, we will go for lunch. Okay, all right, now the next one is, I mentioned this at the beginning of the episode, by the time, and it basically means before a time or event. So we don't really have by the time in Spanish. I think it's like para cuando. And, we use by the time when, we don't know when the action before. So how can I explain this clearly? So the action that we're talking about. So let me give you an example. By the time we arrive. Okay. So, by the time we arrive, that's the thing, our arrival is the action. And I say by the time we arrive, not by the time we will arrive, because after by the time I'm using the present simple. By the time we arrive, comma, the meeting will have already started. So we use by the time when we want to express that something will have started or will have finished before the point we're talking about. And we use it when we don't really know what time the meeting or the thing will have started or finished. Because if I say when we arrive, the meeting will have already started, that means more or less the same. But I mean, by the time, we use it a lot with by the time, by the end of. So this by can cause some problems. For example, if you use it with by the end of the week, I need the report by the end of the week. That means, I don't need the report on Friday. I need it at any time between the time I tell it to you and Friday. So you can give me that report anytime. So I can tell I need that report by the end of the week, which means if I tell you on Tuesday, I need the report finished by the end of the week, then it means that you can give me the report at any point. I don't know when, but at any point before the end of the week, okay? And by the time we arrive, we don't know when the meeting will have started, at what time exactly, but it will have started at some point before we arrive, okay? So we use by the time plus the present simple, we arrive. Okay, I hope that's clear. The next one is the moment, okay? The moment. That's like at that very time, no? At that very point in time. So the moment, and then an example sentence here is, the moment you get into the office, call me. So I don't say the moment you will get into the office. Again, I'm just saying the moment you get, which is present simple. And really important there because we want to, we are talking about something in the future. Like you're not in the office now, but you will be in the office at some point in the future. But again, we're just going to use the present simple after the moment. Another one is until, and until is very common as well. Okay, until. And an example, Melissa will stay until she has finished the report. So again, the first clause is future. Melissa will stay. But then after until, in this case, we're using the present perfect to put the emphasis. Melissa will stay until she has finished the report, because we want to emphasize that she needs to finish that report before she can leave. Okay? So you could say Melissa will stay until she finishes the report as well. I mean, after until, you can use the present perfect and the present simple in this case. So, it's becoming, I guess, I hope it's becoming quite clear to you now that how this works. And after is also another time clause that's used in the future. So another example with after would be, we won't sign the agreement until after we have the board's approval. So again, we won't sign the agreement is future clause, but then we say until after, and the words after are we have the board's approval, not we will have the board's approval again. So after we have the board's approval. So you could also say we won't sign the agreement until after we have got the board's approval, again, to emphasize with the present perfect. And the next one is before. So after and before are both used as future time clauses. And an example would be, we will have to start the meeting before he arrives. So before he arrives, not before he will arrive. We will have to start the meeting before he arrives, or we will go over time. So you can see that it's the clause before and the clause after are using will, like we will have to, and or we will go over time. But as soon as we put this time clause before, then the next verb is he arrives, not he will arrives. So it's really important. After, before, after, until, after all of these time clauses in the future, we just use the present simple or the present perfect. And once. Once is also used as a future time clause here. Once you have completed the research, okay? Once you have completed the research, so here I'm using the present perfect. Once you have completed, because I want to make an emphasis on this. Once you have completed the research, comma, we will make a final decision. So really our decision is based on your research. So it's really important that, I emphasize to you that you need to finish that research before we can take a decision on this. So the temporals, they're called temporals in Spanish, but these future time clauses are very common. They're always used. You'll be using them every day in your speaking. And they people make this mistake quite often, and it's just a little mistake. The good thing is that people will still understand you. However, it's really an easy thing to fix and do correctly. So that's it, my friends. That brings us to the end of episode 119. Well, there you have it, people. I'm sure you'll agree that super easy to use a future time clause. They are used frequently every day and really easy to put them into practice. There are some pretty common expressions that we use, some pretty common time clauses or time expressions that we use on a daily basis. So the key is, you need to use them correctly by not putting a future tense after a future time clause, which may seem counterintuitive because, you're talking about things that will happen in the future. So naturally, you think that after these time clauses, you should put will or going to a future clause or a future tense, whereas it's not necessary, okay? So, or it's not necessarily, and it's wrong, okay? So make sure you don't make that mistake, and start using those. Put them into emails, put them into whatever form of communication you want, because they're really used on a daily basis. They are really easy to use, and the mistake, if you are making it, is easy to correct. Well, that's it from me, my friends, and that's it for another episode of The Art of Business English. We've got lots coming up. I've been working a lot, as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, so stay tuned. I'll be having new episodes, new courses. I'm going to put my webinar replays up soon. I will be delivering you more free, excellent content so that you can continue improving your business English. Now, I hope you're all staying safe. I hope if you are in the Northern Hemisphere, you're enjoying the great spring weather. And I look forward to having you next week on the Art of Business English. So take care and bye for now.